is a beautiful thing. It grows to the quiver of a fife that sings. I can take it with the wave of my hand and place it upon my music stand. Such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing.
Thank you everyone for being here. And right now, of course, I want to thank all of you who are listening to this talk on one of our video platforms. We record and post all of my talks on YouTube, but also on BitChute and also on Rumble. So please subscribe to whatever platform you're watching this video on, so that you can stay informed when we get new videos, and leave a comment, share something. Love to hear from you. Okay, so I have something I need to do. I received a gift in the mail from Robert and Sean, and so they were here when I did my town crier talk. So hear ye, it has been declared by our Lord and divine Creator that we are now freed from every manifestation of guilt, including sickness, death itself. Be not afraid. Woohoo! So thank you, Sean and Robert. Love it, and I think I'll just keep it on for the rest of the talk. How about that? Okay, so for the last couple of months, I have been very focused on freedom. And I've been becoming increasingly aware of what a strong focus A Course in Miracles actually has on freedom. I wasn't aware of that. And, I've been reading it for 40 plus years. It's nice to know that A Course in Miracles can still show me some new things, even after 4 plus decades. That's great. But A Course in Miracles talks about freedom a lot. It's one of its main ideas. And if you also add in the number of times it talks about slavery and imprisonment, that's all related to freedom. So freedom is a big, big teaching in A Course in Miracles. It's right up there with forgiveness. Now, I hear a lot of Course in Miracles teachers talking about forgiveness. I don't hear many of them talking about freedom. But you hear me talking about freedom. A great freedom quote I discovered this week. You have taught freedom, but you have not learned how to be free. Okay, when I read quotes like this, I think it's important to remember that Jesus is first talking to Bill and Helen. So there are a lot of quotes sometimes in A Course in Miracles that seem to almost be judgmental on Jesus's part, where he's talking about the failings or the lacks that exist in the people that he is talking to. And I think if you don't interpret these correctly, it kind of keeps the student stuck at the level of a student. It keeps the person stuck at the level of not having much manifestation or enlightenment in their lives. But let us remember that this was first and foremost talking to two very new people to A Course in Miracles, Bill and Helen. And we don't necessarily have to take it in like this is what Jesus is saying about us right now. I think I have learned how to be free. I'm sure there's more I could learn, but I'm not going to take it in that I do not know what freedom is. I know what freedom is, and I want to learn more about it, and I want to experience it more in my life. But I am declaring that I have learned how to be free in many, many ways. So I think when you read some of the earlier editions of the Course in Miracles, you see more how much Jesus is talking to Bill and Helen personally, and you're able to fit statements like this into a broader context. When they edited the Course and edited out all that personal stuff, then that's a little bit lost, and then statements like this get to be a little misinterpreted. So I don't think A Course in Miracles is telling us that as long as we're reading this book, we have not learned how to be free. I don't think that is what it's saying. So I wanted to put up there. What I do think it is saying is that an intellectual understanding of freedom is not being free itself. So we are asked to be free. We are asked to live free. We are not asked to understand freedom. We are being told to live free. So freedom heals slavery. Freedom heals imprisonment. The Course says, release your body from imprisonment, and you will see no one as prisoner to what you have escaped. So if we are going to release our body from imprisonment, that means we are going to escape from the ideas of imprisonment that we have associated with our bodies, and then we're going to see everybody else exactly the same, because in truth we always see everybody exactly as we see ourselves. So freedom from the body and body issues is a big part, I believe, of what A Course in Miracles is all about. In another quote, it says, but healing is accomplished as he sees the body has no power to attack the universal oneness of God's Son. So the body doesn't really have any power at all to limit us. And this is, again, a very common teaching of A Course in Miracles, and it's something we really have to take in. And I see even long-term students still being convinced that somehow their body and maybe its age or its physical condition has the power to limit us. But we always have to remember that it's always the mind that is doing whatever it is doing, and the body is only responding to the mind. It's not the other way around. It says, the body sickens at the bidding of the mind, which would become its prisoner, and it grows old and dies because the mind is sick within itself. So growing old, and the usual way that we pass out of this realm, dying, is only because we got a sick mind. And I talk about this a lot, and a lot of people resist it, but I just keep finding it reinforced over and over and over again. We must heal ourselves, and we must heal everybody else, and we must heal them from this imprisonment of believing that we are limited by our bodies. We are not creatures with finite lives. We are creatures with infinite lives, and a manifestation of that infinite nature can be held, a symbolic representation of it can be had even here in this realm. It doesn't matter how strong the illusion is. A Course in Miracles tells us that it's just dust, and we can blow it away. I love that imagery. All of this stuff that we think is so solid, the aging of the body, the debilitation of advancing years, it's just dust. Blow it away. And this was one of the quotes in the reading that Reverend Elaine read. Said, only a little wall of dust stands between you and Christ. Blow on it lightly and with happy laughter, and it will fall away, and walk into the garden love has prepared for both of you. So it's talking about a garden here, and there's actually a lot of references to a garden in A Course in Miracles, and sometimes it talks directly about the Garden of Eden, and sometimes it just refers to it as the garden. And the one thing that I really got that I wanted to really reinforce this week is the Garden of Eden is not just the place we left. It's the place we're going back to. It is a life and an existence of abundance, beauty, happiness, and freedom. We came from that place. We came from a manifestation of that place, and we're going back to a manifestation of that place. And we will have the freedom that that place represents. So freedom from what? Well, freedom from guilt, freedom from fear, freedom from shame. Now, the garden, as the Course tells us, is a symbolic garden, and symbolically, Adam and Eve ate from this tree of knowledge, and sometimes called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And after they ate from the tree of knowledge, they felt ashamed. And they felt shame about just their bodily identity. I got a great image here I want to share. I put it on the Sunday program. So, shame about our bodies. Just like that. We're embarrassed. Something's wrong. The body is wrong. What animals experience shame? They don't. But mankind experiences shame. Somehow there's something wrong with their pure physicality. And that's what Adam and Eve experienced after they ate from the fruit of the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge. And after they did that, they put on clothes. So apparently they were unclothed before that. And God saw, the story is, God saw that they put on clothes, and he said to them, and this is from Genesis, and he said, "Who told you you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded that you should not eat?" And yes, they had. So the symbolism usually is that they partook of this fruit, of this idea that there was good and evil. And they didn't just surrender into the wholeness and the beauty of the garden. Suddenly the garden had good things and evil things. And inevitably that led them to feel good and bad about themselves. And the bad that they felt manifested as shame, and the shame that they felt manifested of them feeling like they needed to put clothes on. So again, this is all, symbolic. It's all a metaphor. I usually talk about how A Course in Miracles doesn't have metaphor in it, but sometimes it does have metaphor, and at least once, not only does it have a metaphor, it actually tells us to relate to it like a metaphor. It tells us that it's a metaphor. Again, this is in something that Reverend Elaine read. It says, "The fruit of only one tree was forbidden to man in his symbolic garden." So Jesus is telling us right there that it wasn't a real garden. It was a symbolic garden. And then even more directly, in this quote, again, Reverend Elaine read this one. It says, "The Garden of Eden, which is described as a literal garden in the Bible, was not an actual garden at all. It was merely a mental state of complete need-lack." So we originally existed in manifestation. I'm not talking about reality here. I'm talking about we existed in manifestation in a state of no need and no lack in the garden. In another place, it says, "Turn the world into a garden like the one they came from, into which they go again with added fragrance." So that is, again, the important teaching that I'm trying to put forth here today. Not only did we come from the garden, we're going back to the garden. We're here to remanifest the garden, remanifest it even with more beauty and more abundance and more peace and more beautiful fragrances of life and flowers. That's what we're here to do. There's the expression "from dust to dust." You came from dust. You're going to go back to dust. That's very fatalistic. And it's also really particularly not true. I mean, I know there's an enlightened way to interpret that statement, but the truth is we came from the garden and we're going back to the garden. Garden is where we came from, and the garden is where we shall return. And as I was preparing this talk, I remembered the great song Woodstock by Joni Mitchell. It was made a big hit by Crosby, Stills, and Nash, though Joni Mitchell made it quite a hit. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Though Joni Mitchell made quite a hit of it herself. And the great line in that song is, "And we've got to get ourselves back to the garden." So interesting how that same wonderful idea that is in A Course in Miracles was also coming through Joni Mitchell back in, I don't know, around 1970. So it was probably just around the time that Helen Schuckman was scribing it. So it was a particular thought meme that was planted into the consciousness. If you read A Course in Miracles and you keep that in mind, you realize that it's peppered all throughout the discipline. If it isn't talking about the garden, it's talking about the real world that we're going to manifest. It's talking about the happy dream that we're going to manifest. It's all really just remanifesting the Garden of Eden, the garden, the reality, the existence of lack of need, lack, that we need nothing, that we lack nothing. And in another place it says this, it goes, "Now the world is green, and everywhere the signs of life spring up to show that what is born can never die, for what has life has immortality." So that's what we're here to manifest. We're here to manifest this green world with signs of life springing up everywhere, to show that in a symbolic way, what has life has immortality. And that's what it means by letting go of death and the overcoming of death. I talked a little bit about that last week. We're here to live like immortals. We're not here to connect to the lie being told to us by the serpent that we're limited bodies with mortal lives. We're here to live shamelessly. Who told us we were naked anyway? It wasn't God. Who told us there was something that we needed to be ashamed of? It was the lies of the serpent. It was the lies of the ego. But those lies came from ourselves. So we don't have to believe them. They have no force and no outside reality. They're just delusions and insanity that we're telling ourselves. We can let it go. We can live like immortals. We can live shamelessly. There is no need to cover up. There is no need for that shame. We are holy, divine children of God. We are going back to the garden where we live in freedom. Tomorrow, I am going to a big freedom conference in Memphis, Tennessee. It's called Freedom Fest Memphis. Now, I want people to know that regardless of what you might think, this has absolutely nothing to do with President Trump. Some people think this has got something to do with President Trump. It has absolutely nothing to do with President Trump. It's actually a libertarian conference celebrating liberty and freedom. And some people that are big in the liberty movement, like Del Bigtree, and who is the producer of the High Wire show, is going to be there. And I'm really a big fan of Del Bigtree and the High Wire show, so I'm going there to see Del, and Aaron Siri, and Tulsi Gabbard is going to be there, and a whole bunch of other people. It's a very large conference. And freedom and the freedom movement is a huge thing going on in the world right now. And I think maybe some people are like a little nervous of it because they've associated it with President Trump. I don't know why that would be. I mean, I guess he does talk about freedom. But it's so much bigger and broader and more diverse than President Trump. Robert Kennedy Jr. is in the freedom movement. He's a Democrat. And Del Bigtree is a freedom fighter, and he's a former liberal. He's not a conservative politically at all. So, open up to, there's something going on about freedom in the world, and it's getting stronger and stronger. There was actually a tremendous thing for freedom that happened Tuesday, which was the 4th of July. So on Tuesday, the 4th of July, a federal judge, Judge Terry Doughty, he's a United States District Court judge from the Western District of Louisiana, issued an incredible statement. It was a temporary injunction against the federal government, against the executive branch of the federal government. I mean, it was really just American democracy in action, where the branches of government, have checks and balances on each other. And the judge, Judge Doughty, ordered the executive branch of the federal government to stop coercing and colluding with the big tech companies to restrict the free, protected speech of Americans. So it was a huge win for free speech. And he said in his amazing injunction that what was going on was, and this is a quote, the most massive attack against free speech in United States history. And he was putting a stop to it. He also said the evidence produced thus far depicts an almost dystopian scenario. During the COVID-19 pandemic, a period perhaps best characterized by widespread doubt and uncertainty, the United States government seemed to assume a role similar to an Orwellian Ministry of Truth. So, for those who aren't up on this, it's just that the U.S. government and its agencies we're in constant contact with all the big tech companies, telling them what to restrict, what to allow, who to deplatform. And this is near and dear to my own heart, because I had talks that were taken down from YouTube. And my talks on YouTube, they get 30, 40 views. And if you're all the way of censoring a speaker who's getting 30 and 40 views, that censorship is pretty extreme. And of course, people say, well, YouTube is a private company, can do whatever it wants. But they were doing what the government was telling them to do. That's the problem. It isn't that YouTube can do whatever it wants. It was that the government was colluding with them in what they are now calling the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history. So, an interesting thing about this, and we'll see how this plays out, was that the judge chose to issue this statement and give it the date of July 4th, 2023. Now, the 4th of July is supposed to be a legal holiday, but apparently it wasn't a legal holiday for Judge Doughty. He wanted the symbolic representation of issuing this temporary injunction on the 4th of July. He wanted that symbolic communication. So on July 4th, 1776, the colonies declared freedom from the oppressive government of England and the United Kingdom. And on July 4th, 2023, the judiciary of the United States expressed its belief that the executive branch was overreaching and taking away our freedoms. So I saw that as a big win for freedom and a big win for the freedom movement, and part of us getting ourselves back to the freedom of living in the garden. So, who told us we were naked? Who said there was something that wasn't permitted, that there was something that we needed to be ashamed of? There was certainly nothing in any of my talks that was anything to be ashamed of. I just was sharing my own personal life experience. So, freedom. We're going back to the garden. We need to embrace that. We need not to believe the voices that tell us that we've ever done anything that we need to be ashamed of. We've made mistakes. Those mistakes get corrected. That's what life is all about. Okay, that's my talk for today. Thank you very much.
A flower is a beautiful thing. It grows to the quiver of a fife that sings. I can take it with the wave of my hand and place it upon my music stand. Such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing.